So good day. We're learning the Hechaltzu that the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, wrote in 1898. We're at chapter 26. Hopefully within a month we will finish it, a month or less, God willing. And then I'd like to learn the Maimer Basi Legani for Yud Shvat, for the yahrzeit of the previous Rebbe. In this chapter, the Rashab will teach us what I spoke out yesterday at the latter part of the shiur of the class. And I just want to, it's only a page and a half, so we have a few minutes to talk. I want to talk about this idea a little more that I discussed yesterday, that in order to bring together two opposites, you need to have something that is greater than both. In other words, two opposites cannot join and come together if they're doing it on their own, because they're opposite each other. They oppose each other. So in classical Kabbalah and Chasidus, we have the concept that there's Chochmah and Bina. Creativity is Chochmah, and Bina is development, amplification, understanding. Each is really a very different nuance. A creative person doesn't have the patience to sit still. You know what we call them in psychological terms? Type A, right? Or today they would say you have ADHD. Or in good old, where we're coming from, you say you have spilkis in your backside. You got needles in your backside. You can't sit still. Sit still already. The truth is, someone who's very creative, they're thinking. They're creative. Very hard to be rooted when you're creative. Then, Moshe, you have someone who's docile compared to the creative mind, i.e., the not creative mind, but the development mind, the one that takes that idea, that creation, and says, wait a second. It's a great idea. It's a great idea, but I don't know if it's going to work in the practical world. Let's see. Take it apart. Analyze it. Sit still. Be patient. Be thoughtful. In today's world especially, and I'm talking from my own experience, it's so much harder to be patient and settled and calm and thoughtful, because the world is moving at such a great pace. And if you don't have the latest iPhone, you're not with the Jones. And if you don't have the latest model car, you're a schlepper. So the culture has become such that you got to keep up with the Joneses. You got to keep up with society, right? Microsoft is no longer supporting Windows version 11, I think. Why? We're up to, version 18, 19, who knows? Everything is moving so fast. Bina is that element of soul, that issue within the soul that is calm and settled. It's looking for calmness and settlement. And it's very hard to find. It's very hard to find today. Because as soon as you go into that mode, you're perceived as what they call today, or maybe I'm outdated, a neb, You're a nebuch. You're a loser. So each one being creative versus being settled, calm, and thoughtful has its virtues, and it also has its disadvantages. Because if you have that creative mind, the adrenaline and the excitement is so much more powerful and passionate, and that's the way it is. Someone who is settled and calm, sitting behind a desk and typing in numbers, It's boring. Yet, we have within the personality of a person, from the perspective of the soul, meaning from the perspective of God, of Hashem, both qualities. And both need to be used in the right way. And the question is how. And this is what Chasidus deals with and opens up to us. And I want to tell you that this is so rich, and it's the only place in the Torah where you will find parables, commentary, explanations about these issues. You won't find it in Musar, you won't find it in Gemara, you won't find it in Halacha. They each have their cup of tea. But this type of talk and conversation and analysis is unique to Chabad Chasidus. I challenge you, if you find me another source where it goes into the style, bring it to my attention. And what's my point? Not to say my father's greater than your father. The point is that when we learn Chassidus, and we're learning some very, very difficult ideas, deep ideas, if you break it down, it's bread and butter. If you break it down, it's daily activity. Am I acting with Chochmah now, or am I acting with Bina? Am I being passive and thoughtful, or am I being creative and flighty? Chochmah is flighty, Bina is settled. I refer back to the book that I've told you many times to get a hold of. There might even be some copies still in the Ma'or Shul next to Eish Kodesh, because I brought several of them when I was there 10 years ago or less. The 10 Keys to Understanding from Rabbi Matis Cantor. It is a phenomenal work. What he did was exactly what I'm talking to you about. 10 Keys to Understanding. It's since been reprinted by Kahut, by the Chabad publishing house, Kahos or Kahut. 10 Keys to Understanding by Matis Cantor. And he takes the 10 keys, which we call Chaim Zev in Kabbalah, the Sfirot, the emanations of God, the manifestations of God, and he breaks it down and brings it down in psychological terms. And you'll love it. But it's not a book that you could read, laying on your couch and, just falling asleep. Then you're not going to have anything from it. You got to focus. And Baruch Hashem, everyone here is intelligent. You focus and you do it slow, and it will benefit you. Anyway, so in this chapter, the Rashab says that the only way to bring the two, I don't know if only way, but one of the ways, or the way, to bring the two together, flightiness and settling, Chochmah and Bina, creativity and amplification, is if there's something great, when there's something greater than each of those individually, and they realize that there's something greater here, they basically say, we're going to make it work. So the example that I've given throughout our classes is when the deputy of the Department of Education and Finance and Agriculture, right, and Homeland Security, each of them wants more money from the Treasury. Each one's sucking and fighting and maneuvering. I need more money and more money. When they come into the king, they come into Havdil, the president, then they all quiet down and they all realize, I'm only a deputy and minister and representative of the king, of the president. And before the president, I annul my own individualistic needs, even in the sense of for the cause, for education, transportation, finance, whatever it is. And in front of the king, it's all about the king. When that's the parable, the example, the mashal. So too in the nimshal, in the moral, when you realize that Chochmah and Bina that you have within yourself are coming from the soul, and the soul is coming from God, and God is infinite, there's no reason to fight. And we can make it work. Now, I want to make it clear, it doesn't mean to say, Yisr, that someone who is generally a creative person will become all of a sudden an analytical person, and the person will stop trying to come up with genius inventions and all of a sudden go behind the desk and start typing. It ain't happening. It's not going to happen. You are who you are. But, at least learn to tolerate and better to appreciate the other element, the other notion. That will only take place if you within yourself, whatever you are, the creative or the chokhmah or the bina, has bittul, has humility, subservience to the greater cause. And that's what's missing in our lives many times, and in the collective world. There isn't a subservience to the higher power. There's a subservience to who I am. Well, that's not good enough, because who you are is already limited. You're oriented towards the right. You're oriented towards the left. How do you bring the two together? And that's why people are always bickering and fighting and not seeing each other's virtue. Step back and realize there's a higher power involved, and you are just a pawn in the higher power's desire to implement his wishes. And if that's the case, if there's an opposing opinion, let's take, for example, Moshe, let's take, for example, King David and Shimi ben Gera. Shimi ben Gera, who was so committed to him, all of a sudden curses David. Curses him with death curses. You know what David does? David HaMelech does? He doesn't say, drop dead Shimi, or I'm going to send my warriors to get you and kill you. He says, if I heard that curse from Shimi ben Gera, that means it was meant for me to hear it, even though I believe he's wrong. What lesson can I have from the curse that I just was cursed? I'm asking you, Chasid, to have such a feeling, it takes so much humility. You have to really humble yourself. Here is this jerk cursing him. You're so out of line. You're so outrageous. And what do I walk away with? I heard it. What's the message? What do I have to do to improve myself? That's what we're learning about. All these things are not so clear in the writing of in this chapter that we're about to start learning inside, but that's the overall message. And here you see how you can take a chapter that seems to be so Kabbalistic and so Hasidic, Chabad Hasidish and all that, and if you know how to take it and break it down, it's so real, and you could use it in your work. So let's go now to chapter 26. V'hinei. Based on what we said earlier, we have one thing and its opposite in one space. We have kind of what we call in English an oxymoron, a contradiction. What is that contradiction? What you can comprehend from the point of creativity, bispashtus, hasoga, vavon, the bina, using an element of bina, of comprehension within chokhmah, right? That's the idea of what? Havein bechokhmah. Havein is from the word bina, bechokhmah, in chokhmah. Shehu heipech, this idea is contrary. The little point of the yud, the letter yud of chokhmah. It is the yud represents naught, minuteness, the opposite of expansion. Although this is true, nevertheless, tisachet v'tiskalel im habina. it unites and it's included with Bina Liyas B'Bchinas Hispashtus Dafka, that somehow the Nakuda, the point, has now expansion. Yesh al zeh koyach b'chochma gufa. Says the Rebbe, you know why this is possible? For there to be an element of Bina and Chochma? Because Chochma itself gives room for the notion of Bina. Chochma. Within creativity, there is a notion, in order for my creativity to get somewhere, I need expansion. You hear that? You geniuses out there who are right? I have this great idea. I'm a genius. I came up. But if someone isn't going to do what is it called, product development, Mark, you're a little bit in this field. It ain't going anywhere. You need product development. I was called about a few months ago about someone locally, I don't know who it is, in Brooklyn, was trying to make a game for children based on the previous Rebbe of Chabad and his life. So they hired her because her business is product development. She in turn came to me because she saw my work and my YouTube's, my understanding of Chabad and its history and everything else. So she came to me. In other words, like this: here is someone who comes up with this great idea. Seems like a great idea, but nothing would be with the idea without her work and ultimately with my work and whatever else it takes. So the Rebbe says here that Chochma, creativity, realizes if I want my idea, you need to get somewhere, I need a product development person. I need a marketing person. Let's go further. Shehu inyin v'habein b'chochma. That's the idea of v'habein, have bina within chochma. Next page. Shebchinas habina b'klula b'chochma gufa, that bina itself is incorporated in wisdom, in creativity. Bichdei, in order shetovoi lidei haispashtus, so that the idea should have expansiveness. And then, you hear that? When the Chochma, when the genius says to himself, I need there to be product development, although I am not that way, I am about genius and creativity, but I see that it's right and necessary for there to be product development, then it can come to actually the plane of product development and be developed. But if the genius himself doesn't come to that decision, it's not going to go further. Because he's always stuck in his world. What's the world? The world of genius. The world of creativity. Very nice. What does the world have from that? The world has nothing from it. Oh, so the genius says, I want my product, I want it to get to the world. I want everyone to know about me. I want to become famous. It's all about me. Creativity. Me. But how can I be the big shot? How? I need product development. I need a marketing. I need tools. I need a distributor. That's what he says. So this is, again, genius thought. In other words, Chochma is willing, creativity is willing to begin thinking about the emergence of expansion, which is contrary to its modus operandi. Its modus operandi is up, further away, genius, creativity. And all of a sudden, what is it accepting now? Down, expansion, universe, world, people. So that's what he says. Is this notion is contrary to its essence. Look at the words, Chavre. Hepech etzem ahusa. This idea is contrary to its essential essence. וכך מה שנעשה מגילוי הסוגה דבינה בחינת עין והלם. Now he says, so too, from the other perspective, from the perspective of expansion, allowing itself and wanting itself to become naught, to become, to lose its expansiveness to the idea, so that the idea, as it is in expansion form, will be proper. The koyach vehel pris ayin vehelim the koyach mad and the kudah chokma shezeu inyav hakam bebina. This is the second idea that we said, hakam bebina. Shezeu heipech, next page, shezeu heipech mehusa bina canal. Here he says too, this is so contrary to the concept of bina. Bina is the world of expansion. Bina is the world of show business. Bina is the world of holding your champagne glass and moving your body and impressing people, right? That's the world of Bina. Chachma is the world of isolation. I don't want to be around people. I just want to think, study, right? Bina says, no. You got to get out there. You got to meet people. What happens is that Bina is willing to incorporate the idea so that when it does expand, which is the world and plateau of Bina, its expansion is proper. It's not ego-driven. In other words, if for the idea to express itself in development, to come to the ultimate result, it requires humility. Otherwise, you go off on a cockeyed idea. You come up with crazy ideas, detrimental ideas, destructive ideas, bad for the country, bad for your family, bad for yourself. And you know why that is? Because you didn't humble your expansion. You were so excited to expand and develop, you forgot about the point. You forgot about the Nakuda. What are we talking about over here? We're talking about soul. We're talking about God. We're talking about humility. That's what he says. Let's continue. So what happens is we have here the one and the opposite together. Therefore, you must say, look at his language. You must say, this is what I mentioned earlier. How is it possible for the two opposites to come together? Because there's something greater than each that illuminates and shines here. That brings them together. Get off your high horse, Chachma. Get off your high horse, Bina. You guys are just midgets and working for the king. So when the king shines his light and illuminates and says, wake up, guys. What are you bickering about? You work for me. I got room for both of you. And you say, yeah, we forgot. So then we humble ourselves. So it's only when the greater light and illumination shines. This is the experience of the essential infinite God that transcends both levels, the Helen Vegilui of concealment and revelation, Isser. The world of Helen, concealment, usually we talk about it, wow, the unknown, right? The unknown, the world of Helen is limited to unknown, to being unknown. In other words, it has a limitation. If it has a limitation, it's not God, it's ego. Ego in a very refined way. The world of revelation, surely showing off and bolstering myself is also ego. That's why he says that the atzmos Ein Sof, the essential essence of God, the infinite, that what we call in English transcendence. Transcendence transcends not only Gilui but Helam also. So the pious one learning in the corner, very, very proper, right? Very great, right? Guess what? There's a limitation. Take him out of the corner, he melts away and doesn't know where he is and loses himself. That's the atzmus. But if you have the subservient to the higher power, then both are able to coexist. The shom shneim shavim, you see these words? Both are there. In the world of transcendence, both are equal. Both are just representatives of transcendence. Next page. Therefore, from that perspective of transcendence, there could be, beautiful words, there could be from concealment revelation and revelation concealment. What he's saying is, Moshe, if you're in the world of expansion and revelation, how can you go into the world of concealment and privacy? Make up your mind. And the answer is, you're right. On my own, I wouldn't be able to do it. But if I have subservience to the higher power is limitless. And even the notion of privacy is a limitation. And God is beyond limitations. I don't know if I'm speaking French to you guys. Tell me, do you understand what I'm saying? I have to know, because you're listening. I think I'm explaining it well, but I want to hear from you. Go ahead.
No, I'm following.
No questions?
Yeah. I mean, I have a question. Does the same thing work with Chesed and Gevura?
Yes. Same idea. The same idea, because
they come together.
Right, and someone who's Isha Chesed has a hard time with Gevura. Someone's Isha Gevura has a hard time with Chesed. But when they realize that there's something greater than Chesed and Gevura, i.e., the neshama, the higher power, then if they inculcate that into their reality, they can live together. It's the same idea with Avraham Avinu and Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva, the Gemara says in Brachas, sought self-sacrifice. And he got it. The Romans killed him, right? They got to him, right? In other words, Rebbe Akiva had a certain orientation. He was already limited. He was already, or better said, he already was conditioned. Avraham Avinu wasn't conditioned. Avram said to God, I'm yours. Now you decide what you want from me. You want me to jump into a fire with the Nimrod? I'll jump in. You want me to go around and teaching monotheism? I'm in. You want me to sit back? I'm in. You want me to stand outside after I'm circumcised? In other words, I'm yours. When you talk about Chesed and Gvura as two notions on their own, you're not gods. You're yourself. You're either a Chesed man or a Gevura man. Let's talk about this just simply. Hachnosas Archim, we mentioned it, but again, right? You see sometimes most people are limited in the Hachnosas Archim. They do Hachnosas, they invite people, but if the person who's derailed or has a bad odor, they don't let him into the house. They don't invite him. No, their chesed is limited. Someone else, and I've seen this, it's not just talk, I've seen it by people, by few people. Go in and you'll see all kinds of people that you wouldn't want to be around. Most people wouldn't want to be around. They're able to go to a higher plateau. I'm just saying the concept. So when you mention Chaim Zev, Chesed and Gevura are exactly conditioned to Chesed and Gevura. Then there is what we call Rachamim, which the Kabbalah says touches the Ein Sof. What does that mean? The infinite. What does that mean? It means that it evokes from God and impacts you that it's conditionless. I'm transcended. I'm not Chesed, I'm not Gvura. What are you? I'm God. I'm experiencing God. What's God? God's not Chesed. God's not Gvura. God is Ein Sof, transcendent. Kitzer, let me just read the Kitzer. Ichut hafochim de Chochma Bina, the unity of opposites of Chochma and Bina can only take place when there is a higher power than both that shines on them. And I told you yesterday, just to repeat it now, we'll finish, is that's the idea of a tzaddik, a Rebbe. A Chassid, has their limitation. He likes this Rebbe, he likes this, right? When he identifies properly with a tzaddik and a Rebbe, it's no longer about what's good, what I like. And a lot of people can't really have a problem with this. We've seen it, and I've documented it. People who were part of, let's say, Yoni, of a previous Rebbe. When our Rebbe became a Rebbe, in 1950, at 48, quite a few of the elders couldn't relate to it, and his style was completely different. Well, not outwardly completely different, right? What does that show? That shows that their commitment before was conditioned. It was conditioned to a big fur hat called a shtreimel. And this new young Rebbe of 48 years old, even though he's a relative of Schneerson, he don't wear a shtreimel. Like, hey, isn't a Rebbe supposed to have a shtreimel? Where does it say that? Oh, it says it because that was tradition. You could either believe it came from Baal Shem Tov or not, whatever. Everyone has their their argumentation and positions. But what?
Is that the same? Is that the same thing? I don't know if it's the same parallel, but like in most Chasidus today, like most Chasidim with Vishnitz and Ger and Satmar. Is that what you're referring to? I mean, you gave an example of the Rebbe, but we all know that afterwards everybody accepted the Rebbe as the Rebbe. I don't think there was anybody in Lubavitch that ever had anything to Lubavitch that said he wasn't the Rebbe. And maybe in the beginning, I'm saying, like in the beginning, yes, but I'm saying like afterwards, people, they accepted it.
Okay, what's your point?
So my point is, what you're talking about, is it happening today?
Well, today,
It's like my Rebbe, right?
But today, I'm saying, as Hasidic Jewry started to come into being after the Holocaust, changes were taking place, and people, had this image that a Rebbe is some kind of, angel. Who looks like an angel, talks like an angel, feels like an angel, and if you don't feel like an angel, then you're a good man, but, and you take that same notion now, 2025, 26, right? Tavshin Pei Vav, we're going, it's like, well, I don't have a Rebbe in a body to visit. Isser came to New York, he saw 770, he saw Chassidim, some he liked, some he didn't like, but he didn't see the Rebbe, right? He saw the Rebbe's base medrash. He saw they went to the oil, maybe went to the Rebbe, right? So there is and I just heard a shliach or someone who was a teacher of Chassidus, Tzfas speaking, and a fine guy, I know him, and he's struggling with like, where's Mashiach? The Lubavitcher Rebbe said Mashiach is coming now, and there's no Mashiach here yet. Like, and I'm saying to myself, I happen to listen to it, and saying, I would never have that question. Why? And I'm not bragging, because I was raised from birth with this DNA. So if in the Holocaust we didn't have Mashiach, and in the Spanish Inquisition, then today not having Mashiach is the same thing. And we need Mashiach, and we want Mashiach. But I don't, is my commitment based on a certain statement that the Rebbe made? Absolutely not. See, so there are Hasidim who become, and it's not just Lubavitch, whether it be Bell, whatever, they become for a Chassid of a certain Rebbe because they're looking to get something from the Rebbe. That's not why I'm a Chassid of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. I'm not looking to get anything. I really am not. I see this as a truth outside of what I get of it. I can get nothing of it, and it can even backfire. But this to me is a truth, a paradigm. Since it's a paradigm, I'd like to be part of that paradigm. That's pure Chassid Rebbe relationship in any Chassidus, the way it should be. Not like I have a friend here who was a Bayaner Chassid. He left Bayan, became Chabad. I asked him, why did you leave Bayan? Oh, he said because something happened with his daughter and he felt he was treated wrong, and another thing happened and he felt the Rebbe was not being honest. I mean, that whole scenario, but in us, by real Chabad, is disgusting. It's not but truth be told, there were such Lubavitcher Chassidim, and maybe there are some still like that, like this guy who's such a fine person, but like you're questioning the Rebbe, saying, what's there a question? Are you God? Am I God? Do we have answers? Like that's what your Chassidus is based on. Just be a Chassid. If you want to be this Chasid, be a Chasid of the Chassidus. And that's my answer. If it's an answer to those that say, well, we don't have a physical Rebbe to look at and to speak to. And what, when he was alive, how much interaction did you have? Little. I'm from the inside. I'm telling you, little. Okay? I did see him by Fabrengens. That's true. I heard Torah from him. But I'm saying that's not what makes the Chassid. That's a Chassid that's conditioned. And that's what we're learning here in the Maimer. That the connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu goes way beyond any type of condition. Okay, we will maybe one day bring more about this. Have a great day, everyone. We'll see everyone tomorrow.
Good stuff.
Take care.
Bro.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.